August 1942, Truck Lagoon, Central Pacific. A humid breeze drifts through the Japanese naval base as officers of the Imperial Japanese Navy gather around a projection screen. Grainy American footage flickers a curious tracked vehicle crawling awkwardly from surf to sand. Its flat hull slaps the waves like a stubborn turtle. The men laugh. "Ugly thing," one captain scoffs, adjusting his sword belt. "If this is America's amphibious power, they'll drown before they reach our beaches." He wasn't alone in his mockery. Across the Pacific, intelligence analysts labeled the vehicle amphibious nonsense, too slow, too exposed, too ridiculous to survive real combat. To the Japanese high command, the notion of an armored tractor ferrying troops through coral reefs was laughable. But in Florida, years earlier, a man named Donald Roebling had designed this nonsense for something far different than war it was meant to rescue hurricane victims. His alligator, built to wade through swamps and floodwaters, caught the attention of the U.S. Marine Corps, and by 1942, Roebling's rescue craft had become something no one, not even he, had imagined: an amphibious assault vehicle. At Camp Pendleton, young Marines climbed into these strange, steel-bodied boats with treads. They looked like half tanks, half boats, and handled like neither. Many call them water tractors. The nickname stuck: LVTs, landing vehicle, tracked. Marines joked that if you could drive an LVT without sinking, you could drive anything on Earth. But behind the humor was respect, because they knew what lay ahead: an assault across coral reefs that no landing craft could pass. And the first test would come soon, at a place called Tarawa, November 20th, 1943, Badio Island, Tarawa Atoll. The lagoon is calm, deceptively calm. The sun hangs high and merciless, casting a blinding glare across the turquoise water. Beneath it, thousands of Marines from the 2nd Marine Division brace for the order to move in. The air is thick with tension and the smell of fuel, salt, and fear. Major General Julian C. Smith peers through binoculars from the command ship USS Maryland. Before him lies Batio, a speck of coral just 2 miles long, bristling with Japanese defenses. Concrete bunkers, coconut log pillboxes, and machine gun nests stretch across the beaches like fangs. Inside those bunkers waits Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki and his 4,800 defenders, men who have sworn to die rather than surrender. They've spent months preparing. They believe their guns, trenches, and tide will stop any American attempt cold. And in the quiet before the storm, their confidence is absolute. At 0500 hours, the naval bombardment begins. The sea erupts as 16-inch shells rain down from battleships. Shockwaves ripple through the lagoon. Entire palm groves vanish in geysers of sand and fire. The Marines watch, awestruck, as the horizon burns. Then comes the order: landing craft, commence your run. The first waves of Higgins boats roar forward, packed with men and gear. But as they approach the reef, disaster strikes. The tide is lower than predicted. Higgins boats, with their flat hulls, grind to a halt hundreds of yards short of the shore. Japanese gunners, stunned by the bombardment, now regain their senses and their sights. The lagoon turns red. Machine guns rake the stranded craft. Mortar shells plunge into the shallows. Marines leap into chest-deep water, dragging rifles and packs, wading across 600 yards of open killing ground. The Japanese laugh from their bunkers just as they had months before. But then, a new sound cuts through the chaos. A deep, mechanical growl. LVTs. The ugly ducklings have arrived. The first wave of LVT-1 second surges forward, their engines roaring against the surf. Painted in dull olive drab, the tracked hulls plow through the lagoon, churning up foam and coral dust. Spray lashes across the driver's goggles as bullets spark harmlessly against the curved armor plate. Inside one LVT, Corporal Raymond Red Harlan grips the wheel with white knuckles. He can't hear the gunfire anymore, just the deafening thrum of the Continental radial engine behind his seat. Around him, Marines crouch low, rifles clutched tight, faces pale beneath their helmets. "Keep her straight," the crew chief shouts. "Through the reef," Harlan growls back. The treads bite into coral. The LVT bucks, then lurches free, and suddenly, they're over. Ahead, Bedio looms like a scar on the horizon, shrouded in smoke and flame. From their bunkers, Japanese defenders open fire. 7.7 millimeters rounds streak across the shallows, pinging off the LVT's armor. A shell explodes nearby, showering water and coral fragments. But the vehicles keep moving, relentless, unstoppable. To the stunned Japanese, it's as if the sea itself has turned into an army. The LVTs grind up the beach, dropping their ramps as Marines spill out into the sand. Within minutes, American troops are behind the seawall, throwing grenades into pillboxes and clearing trenches. A second wave of LVTs follows, some carrying supplies, others ferrying wounded men back to the lagoon. By midday, what had seemed impossible breaching Tarawa's coral defenses is reality. Major General Smith receives the radio report from the beachhead. LVTs made it over. Beach secure for now. The ugly ducklings had done what the sleek, admired Higgins boats could not. They had carried the Marines directly through the surf, over the reef, and into the jaws of fortified hell. And for the first time, Japanese commanders stopped laughing. By dusk, Bedio burns. Smoke drifts low over the shattered palm trees, mixing with the stench of fuel and cordite. The once pristine lagoon is now a graveyard of wrecked landing craft, drifting corpses, and twisted steel. But amid the carnage, the rhythm of the LVTs continues, engines growling like mechanical beasts as they grind across the sand, hauling ammunition, stretchers, and reinforcements. Captain Tex Peterson stands beside a smoldering Japanese bunker, shouting orders through the din. Get those ducks up front. We're pushing east. A pair of LVTs, splattered with mud and bullet scars, lumber forward. Marines crouch behind their armored flanks, using them as moving shields. The vehicles fire back with mounted .50 caliber Brownings, cutting through palm log fortifications that hours before seemed indestructible. Japanese defenders, once confident in their island fortress, now fight from desperation. Admiral Shibasaki's men counterattack with everything they have: knee mortars, grenades, even bayonet charges through the smoke. But the LVTs, low and relentless, crawl through the chaos, bridging trenches and flattening firing pits. At 1,800 hours, Shibasaki radios his final message. Our weapons have been destroyed. We will fight to the last man. By the second night, the defenders' fire begins to falter. The next morning, the Marines advance through what's left of Bedio's western end, the air thick with flies and the metallic tang of blood. Everywhere, the tracks of the LVTs carve through sand and ruin like scars across the island. A war correspondent scribbles in his notebook. The tide that broke on Tarawa was not the sea, it was steel. In the days that follow, the U.S. military studies the battle intensely. Casualties are staggering: over 1,000 Marines killed in 76 hours. But the LVTs are hailed as the heroes of the landing. Without them, most agree, the assault would have failed before it began. As reports reach Washington, naval planners take notice. New LVT variants are already being designed: thicker armor, mounted cannons, improved engines. The lesson is clear. The age of the amphibious tank has arrived. Across the Pacific, Japanese intelligence intercepts photographs of the captured island. In the background, among the wreckage, lie the hulking shapes of LVTs, blackened but unbroken. The same officers who had once laughed at them now pore over every image in silence. They had underestimated an ugly duckling, and it had grown into a monster. February 1944, San Diego Naval Yard. Rows of newly built LVT-2 water buffaloes glisten beneath the coastal fog. Crews swarm over them, painting hull numbers, testing tracks, loading ammunition crates. The vehicles are bigger now, stronger, meaner. Mounted with 37mm cannons and twin machine guns, they look nothing like the ungainly prototypes that once drew laughter in enemy briefings. A Marine sergeant runs a hand along the steel flank of his assigned craft. The paint is still tacky, the smell of oil thick in the air. Ugly or not, he mutters, this thing gets us home. The lessons of Tarawa have been burned into the doctrine of every amphibious commander. No longer are the LVTs seen as novelties or auxiliaries, they are the spearhead. When planning the next assault, Kwajalein, Saipan, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, the first question is no longer if the LVTs can go ashore, but how many they can bring. At the Pentagon, reports circulate among Allied High Command. Photographs of LVTs crawling through enemy fire become symbols of American adaptability, the triumph of ingenuity over arrogance. Admiral Nimitz himself calls them the bridge between sea and land. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Japanese engineers scramble to catch up. Hastily built amphibious trucks and tanks roll off factory lines, but they are too few, too late. The industrial machine of the United States now churns at full throttle. For every LVT lost, 2 more arrive fresh from California shipyards. In the months ahead, these amphibious tractors will thunder onto coral beaches, from the Gilberts to Okinawa. They'll ferry men, guns, even tanks, carrying the war ever closer to Japan's home islands. Each new landing will bear the same echo of Tarawa's lesson, that mockery is no armor against innovation. And for the men who rode those steel beasts into the surf, the drivers, the riflemen, the radio operators, the LVT would forever be more than a machine. It was the difference between dying in the reef and setting foot on the beach. When the war finally ends, many of those vehicles will be left behind, rusting hulks half buried in Pacific sand. But their legacy will endure in every modern amphibious force that followed. From Korea to Vietnam, from the Persian Gulf to today's expeditionary Marines, the DNA of Roebling's alligator lives on. Back in Florida, the original inventor receives a letter from a Marine veteran of Tarawa. It reads simply, "You built a lifeboat. The rest of us just called it salvation.